Hi, everyone. So, typically, I'd be sitting there, right there, in that center section, listening to one of the several assemblies that take place throughout the school year. The topics of the school assemblies don't always hold everyone's attention, myself included, but I find my attention especially more concentrated now, since I'm soon to make the transition from middle school to high school. Aside from that, an easily distinguished fact is that from a young age, we're sheltered souls. Things in life just aren't as obvious. Everything's just peachy in most cases, right? But of course, with age, those things become more prominent. Now being 14, the realities of the world have unraveled before my eyes, and the truths have unveiled themselves. But sadly, those truths mostly contained the problems that have plagued us. We have wondrous things in this world, but imagine the powers we could have gained if the problems we created were gone. Imagine the movement we could have made if we weren't the ones standing in our own way. Today, the discrimination against immigrants is one of those humongous problems. It has tainted our view of the world. Needless to say, we have created this. We generalize and we group people because the process has been ingrained into us. But it seems to be that severity seems to be the only time for change. Since the beginning of what we call the United States, our progress has been based on the movement to and development of this country. But after a certain amount of time, we seem to have forgotten half of this. Specifically the fact that we came here. Maybe not individually, but unless you're about the small 2% of natives who are still alive, you came from somewhere else. This logic is self-conflicting and just doesn't make sense. And it just so happens to be that we generalize and group people because of anything. Gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, skin tone, anything. Back in the 1800s, for a good 60 years, Irish immigrants made up a large sum of the immigrant population at the time. They were coming here in order to escape famine. During that same time period, Chinese immigrants came into this country in hopes of a better life. But instead of greeting them with love, we greeted them with that discrimination that I'm talking about right now. We told them that foreigners ruined the country, that they had to become American, or they weren't loyal. Well, during the 40s, Japanese were those people, and it was even worse for them. During the time, we were fighting World War II, and it was in full force. And at the time, we as people decided among ourselves that it was okay to imprison people who were here for the same reasons as us, to make every ounce of our short lives count. Fast forward to the 50s and 60s. Mexican immigrants and Latin American immigrants made that same straddle forward. But we only greeted them with that same discrimination. Today, we have to pay careful attention because Latin Americans, Asian immigrants, African immigrants, and Middle Easterners come into this country with a sense of rejection. Because that same hate that we gave in the past, we give today. Now, it seems to be that there is a huge problem. And that problem is that hate flows through this world, no matter what. We push it onto others, and we make excuses for it to be okay. But in anyone's eyes, can hate truly be okay? This comes into play with the process of coming into this country. It is extremely difficult to immigrate. Imagine this. You are in a terrible situation, and you must escape. But there isn't an escape. Imagine standing right here, and each wall surrounding you was only 1 foot away, right? So easy. But the door taking you to the other side was 8 feet thick and 2 tons heavy. Imagine it. Now, I'd like you to understand that instead of sharing that hate that we give, why not share the love? It seems to be the easiest question, right? I live with 8 people. And before I address this, yes, it's 8 and 2 dogs. And at one point, it was 14. So this is absolutely nothing. And 3 of those people that I live with right now are younger than me. They're right there in the crowd. I see you. And majority of the day, we, and by we I mean my parents who are also in the crowd, and my uncle and aunt, spend the day teaching them to love each other, to cooperate with each other, and most importantly, to share. But the problem is we as people have the inability to ingrain the same habit of sharing into our adult lives like we have done with children. What is the difference between the same process that we took from ingraining grouping into our adult lives and sharing? What is the difference between a small child and us? And a small child and this entire country? I understand. Nothing in this world is perfect. And it won't be perfect. But this allows me to work for my very best. Why not apply that same initiative that we as people have for ourselves into improving the lives of others? Those who just need a little bit more aid to make it their very best life. Originally, when I began this talk, when I was writing it, I began with the story of my immigrant father, who is also in the crowd, and his story of being an immigrant. And I also began with the story of my grandmother and her family. But I was reluctant to add in their story. You can see I didn't. But my point is that I was reluctant. Why? Not because I'm ashamed. I could never be. But because their experiences were only one experience. And this problem concerns everyone. This is a U.S. problem. This is an us problem. And this is a Goshen problem. And we as people, Goshen, should find a solution. Thank you.